Hello and welcome back to the High Vibe Honey podcast, a space where power meets peace, frequency meets finesse, and your next level doesn't require you to hustle harder, just calibrate deeper. I'm your host, Katie Rogers, soul-led leadership and legacy coach for high-performing, heart-led women who are done performing their power and are ready to embody it. Here, we don't chase alignment, we become it. We decode identity, emotional capacity, somatic leadership, and the subtle energetics that make you magnetic. If you're a visionary woman who knows success is inevitable, but you're ready for it to feel better in your body, cleaner in your business, and more rooted in who you really are, then you are in the right space. This isn't surface level strategy. This is frequency first evolution. So let's get into it. Today, I am joined by Samantha Jo, known across the world as the Pleasure Queen. She is the host of the With Pleasure podcast, creator of the Pleasure Codes, and one of the most embodied electric women I've had the honor of sharing space with. Samantha's work is where sacred sexuality meets business brilliance and where nervous system healing becomes the gateway to a more liberated, prosperous, and pleasure-soaked life. We're going to go deep today into what happens when you stop using pleasure as a reward and start using it as the actual strategy. And I cannot wait for you to meet her. Samantha, I'm so happy that you are here. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Katie. I'm so pumped to spend this time together.
Yes. Um, I obviously know a little bit about your journey already, and I'm so excited to share more of that with this audience. And I know you call yourself a lifelong seeker, and that the path has been all kinds of directions going through this, as many of us understand on our journey to our success. But what did your journey into somatics and sacred sexuality actually look like for you?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. Well, it's hard for me to keep that story simple because, like you said, I do consider myself a lifelong seeker. And when I say that, I mean I had this great karma of being born into a family with a grandmother who was very plugged into spirituality and metaphysics. And, she started introducing me to energetics at a very young age. And there was a sort of turning point. I feel like it was like one of those line in the sand moments, when you look back at your life and I was like, and you're like, oh, that's where I really kind of stepped into who I was always gonna become.
Yeah.
And I was probably around, I would say maybe 8 or 9. And my grandmother had gifted all the women in the family reflexology sessions for Christmas that year, including me, even though I was just this tiny girl because I loved getting foot rubs from her. And so I remember going down into the basement and the reflexologist had set up all kinds of candles and made it was like a nice little like cozy
Yeah.
cake. And as she was working on a certain pressure point in my foot, I felt something. And when I felt the thing that I felt that I didn't have words for at the time, a candle holder shattered, a glass candle holder shattered. And
Wow.
the therapist said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "That was your energy that caused that effect of the candle holder shattering." And I was like, my mind was blown. It was like pieces were coming together.
Yeah.
I went upstairs. I couldn't wait to go tell my grandmother. I went upstairs. I'm like, Meme, you got to hear this. And she was like, yeah, your energy is so powerful. Your energy is what you are, and you can create in effect impact through your energy, through your thoughts, and through your energy and the way that you utilize it. And she started to tell me, started to explain to me that when she was a kid, she and her friends used to sit and they used to practice using their mind power to like make paper move or like try to make spoons bend. And I
Yeah.
just you could have given me a letter to Hogwarts. Like I felt like I had just this was my Hagrid moment. I was like Harry Potter sitting in that little tiny house and getting the cake. I was just like, are you kidding me? Like we're magic, we're like actual magic in this
Yeah.
family. And so she set me up with this little piece of paper. And I remember I come from this big Italian family, and it's just like cacophony, like noise everywhere. Everybody's just, all the things are happening. And here's me, just like this little oddball of the family sitting there at the table, staring at the paper, like willing it to move. And I feel like I sat there for so long. And I was like just about to give up. And I kind of looked over at her, and she gave me one of those looks of like, you got this. Like she believed in me, and it helped
Yeah.
me to believe in myself. And just
Mm.
a little bit longer, and the friggin' paper moved down the table. And I was like, holy shit, okay.
Oh
So
my God, I love this.
that's kind of the beginning for me, honestly. And from there, I was always, I didn't know the word theologian, but if I had known that word as a kid, it probably would have been one of those funny things that would have been like, I'm a theologian. I loved like learning about different religions and practices and people's conception of God and life and the meaning of it all. And ultimately, that led me to becoming a yoga practitioner and student I was probably 18 or 19 when I really started to dive into yogic philosophy. And that unfolded over many years and becoming a teacher and facilitating retreats and events and transformational experiences. And then, ultimately, I came to this moment in time probably around 2019, where I was sitting with this question of like, why, if I am so connected to such elevated philosophy, and so are my clients, and so are the people in my life, I'm surrounded by seekers and practitioners and yogis and people who
Mm.
meditate. And why, if we're connected to these elevated philosophies about life, and we know that the nature of the soul is actually bliss, why is my marriage still suck? Why is my bank account empty? Like I was like, what is with this? I feel like we should be able to like have this together. Like, why are we getting
Yeah.
stuck in the same places again and again? And that was a prayer. It was like a deep, deep inquiry. Like, how can I, first of all, help myself to overcome these patterns? And how can I help and serve my people and my clients? And I remember like reading Caroline Myss and reading about the subconscious, and it was still very much a mystery at that point, like
Yeah.
okay, but if it's the subconscious and this is running my life, but I can't get to it, like what is the fucking point of knowing about it? And then I remember being in this inquiry, like, what is my next step? What is my next step? And my husband and I were in the car, and he was in his training to become a massage therapist at the time. And he asked if we could listen to a massage therapy podcast. And I was like, sounds exciting. Like, okay. I also like, I'm a yogi and I study anatomy and physiology. So I'm like, okay, like maybe there's something cool here. And he
Mm.
put it on. And the guest on the podcast, that particular episode was a somatic experiencing practitioner. And she was talking about the nervous system, and she was talking about trauma, and she was talking about healing trauma. And that was it. That was the answer for me that I had been asking for. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not actually a mystery how we get to the subconscious. It is actually the felt sense. And
Mm.
that I signed up for my professional training, somatic experiencing professional training like that day, and started that process over the course of years of really diving in. And so that's the sort of like origin story. And then there's so much more than that around how pleasure really came into the mix and business. But, those are the foundations of what led me down this path.
Yeah, I love so much of what you shared, and I want to pull on this space of so many of us. We want to be the student, we want to get the information and the intelligence, and we think, well, what is the answer? And if I just keep reading or I keep listening to podcasts, and I'll find it. And it's really that journey from the head into the heart, into the body, into this felt sense. And I so agree with you in that when that became part of my journey as well, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been living up here in my mind and I've been living on the surface, but here is where I'm really, and it's so easy, right, to get distracted by the 3D world and get distracted by your five senses and to, um, staying in that space. But how beautiful that you got that, and you're not even looking for it as well. It's just these things find you because they're meant for you, which I just love.
That's right. Nothing, you'll never miss out on anything that's meant for you. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? So it's like these deep musings are planted in our hearts for a reason. I feel like when we really ask and we really are with the faith that it's coming, then it shows up. And yeah, what you said, it's like we just tend to overthink and underfeel. And
Mm-hmm.
it's I often say to my clients, like we have a superhighway from body to mind, where we're constantly checking out of body and into mind and sort of in our rational explanation of why we feel the way we feel, the storytelling, the meaning making. And so my work is work that really helps people to develop that road, from mind back down to body, right? So that we can be really, I have a space called the temple. It's like the body is the temple. And to me, yoga is really the process and the practice of bringing the mind and body into alignment with the soul, because we really want the soul to be leading, but so often it's like our subconscious patterns and our trauma responses and our beliefs are what are leading. That's like the energy that's leading. And so then we have desires, but we don't have capacity that matches with the desire. And
Yeah.
capacity is going to win.
Yes, exactly. And I think this is where I want to sort of lean into more of the pleasure piece as well and the capacity for pleasure, because I think often people come to this work and they are very good at maybe introing into the sort of trauma integration side through somatics and things like that. And then when it moves into like, okay, well, so you have the capacity now to be with the fear, to be with the shame, with the guilt, and to integrate some of what's looking to be more fully integrated there. And then I feel like that's the entry to then be like, oh, now let's move to advanced, where you expand your capacity for pleasure and you expand your capacity to feel good. So I would love to hear more from you on the sort of healing side of that part of the journey too.
Yeah, I would love to share that. Thank you. And I guess just as a foundation to that, I'd love to just give an insight into how when I came in, when I started to actually bring the work I was learning through somatic experiencing into practice, I was doing trauma resolution work. And so I was
Mhm.
working really in the trauma vortex with people. And I was really good at that. But it also wasn't, I realized that there was more. I kind of got to a point in that work where it's like, okay, but we're not just healing trauma to heal trauma.
Yeah.
That's not the end goal. Like we're healing trauma to thrive. And so what is the rest of that spectrum? And my work is really about shifting the paradigm from surviving to thriving. So once we get out of survival, once we have the capacity and the bandwidth and we've moved things out, then what is the next part of that pendulum to get to
Mm.
that other side of the paradigm? And you know, I was going through like a difficult separation with my husband at the time, a temporary separation, and I had this interesting experience where I wasn't grieving. I wasn't grieving. And I thought that that was somehow enlightened, because I was somebody that
Yeah.
had all this yogic like non-attachment, and it was like somehow enlightened for me to just like not be feeling this.
Mm. Mhm.
I was receiving this really interesting message like everywhere I turned. You have those synchronistic experiences where it's just like there's something that's meant for you and it's coming in from every angle. And it's just like, wow, this is really funny and wild. And it was like the message I was getting was go fuck yourself, literally. Like
Yeah.
all of this like sexual liberation content was like coming, like friends were bringing things up, sending me websites. You got to check this out. And I was like, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Um, so I went down this path of pleasure and really starting to commit to a regular self-pleasure practice. And I got really interested in, experiencing a cervical orgasm, this like unicorn of an orgasm, that I had
Yeah.
never even heard of. It was like new to me at that time in my life. And so I went on that journey, over the course of, a couple weeks and went through a whole process of de-armoring. And there was a lot of discomfort in the process that I was willing to lean into because of my curiosity. Like I have the capacity for this discomfort because I'm very curious about the potential on the other side, which is so important for us in expanding our
Mhm.
capacity in our nervous system because it requires feeling the discomfort in order to lean into the possibility, right?
Yeah.
And then ultimately, I did have that experience. I unlocked that cervical orgasm, and it was like everything that I thought it would be, and so much pleasure, and just cosmic waves unfolding, and like such a God moment. And on the other side of that, I felt more grief than I had ever felt in my whole life.
Mhm.
And it was like not just the grief from separating from my husband, it was not just the grief from years of abuse that I had experienced with the father of my daughter. It was not just being a single mom for 6 years. It was like all of that plus more, like grief from my lineage, grief just I had never felt it before. And I laid there in a puddle on the floor, just like feeling. And I feel like that cervical orgasm did more for me than any somatic experiencing session had. And so I real and the miracle was that it actually completely shifted my perception about my husband and my marriage. And we actually now have now been together for 7 years, and we've created something pretty extraordinary together because in that shifting moment, it revealed so much about myself to me. And I had blamed so much of our issues in our marriage on him. And I
Mhm.
realized in that moment that it was like that was part of the way that my system was protecting because of my past trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma that I had been working out in these little sessions with somatic experiencing practitioners, little bits, little bits. But man, the wave of realization, once I created enough safety in my body through pleasure, and it in that moment expanded so much capacity that my system was able to reveal to me because there was enough relative safety. Wow, look at the way you've been in a complete like chronic flight fawn pattern and the way that you've been in freeze and the way that you haven't been able to express yourself and the way things get stuck in your throat when you want to say them, like all these things started to become very apparent and I realized I had some fucking work to do. But now I was like, oh, this is an interesting piece. If I've been working with people and myself, you know, with micro doses of pleasure, because in SE
Mhm.
we call it resourcing, right? It's like you can't even go into your body, your subconscious won't even really let you into a traumatizing memory or a hard, a difficult memory, a painful memory, unless there's enough of a resource. What's a resource? Something that feels good, right? So for
Mhm.
listeners right now, and for you and me, like you can just look around, really slowly slow down, look around your environment, orient, and find something that you like to look at. And then you just kind of let your eyes land there a little longer and you stay. And when you stay, often you feel a shift in your body. You feel a
Yeah.
little softening, right? An expansion, a lightness. And so if we're working on those little microdose levels, what happens when we macrodose through like orgasmic pleasure? It
Mhm.
certainly collapses time, on the
Yes.
process of expanding your capacity. And so I started to bring this into my work because this was part of, my ask about thriving life. It's like, okay, well, it's not actually like your purpose here is not to heal. Like that's not your highest purpose isn't healing. It's self-actualization,
Mhm.
right? And as somebody who's been in the wellness industry for a very long time, there's a real hyper focus on healing, and it's beautiful. We need that. But
Yeah.
what's beyond that? And I see the way that we perpetuate this feeling of having to work on ourselves to heal, and it's very past oriented. But what happens when we start to future orient towards who we're becoming and who we
Yeah.
want to be and how we would like to self-actualize? And what is the resource that we need to take us into that rather than just a little enough of a resource to keep working with the past. And so for me, the bridge there is pleasure as the ultimate nervous system expander, as the antidote to our pain. And it's not just about feeling good. I have these three, this pleasure codes framework. And the first one is doing more of what feels good. And it's not just that it's about feeling good. It's really about like getting good at feeling. And the more we know what does feel good, the easier it is to discern what doesn't. And then
Mhm.
we can sit with, do I need to expand my capacity to be with this thing that doesn't feel good, right? Because we're going to encounter fear and we're going to encounter shame and we're going to encounter doubt and insecurity. And, we're going to have to push in certain ways on the path of self-actualization. So, how do we bring the pleasure into the pressure of growth so that we can keep moving forward instead of retracting back?
Yeah.
And that is what I help my clients to do with the pleasure codes. Like, how do you actually process when an emotion comes up in your body or when a subconscious holding pattern comes up, it has a sensation. And sensation is really the language of the subconscious. So it's
Mhm.
not this big mystery anymore. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to have the story about what it means. It's just like it feels like gripping and constriction in my body. Let's
Right.
work with it on that level. And then you free up some space, to normalize extraordinary, to really align with that, that future memory self, of how you want to move through the world.
Oh, stunning. And I was just like, It is the hottest day of the year in here, and yet I have full body chills listening to you share this. This is so wonderful.
I'm
And
so happy.
yeah, and definitely like on my journey as well in coaching, and I did a lot of the trauma integration stuff, and I kind of became known for that. And from that space, I'm like, I want to get you good, but there's a whole journey beyond here we can dive into. And that's really the work that I love doing, is seeing somebody go through that more like advanced stages of expanding their capacity to allow things to feel good. And often what I think is such a beautifully intentioned part of this is also a protection mechanism of um, I don't need to feel that, as you so beautifully named it, this idea that, oh, I'm kind of more advanced because I didn't feel all this level of grief and there's things, and we sort of think we need to bypass that in some way of like, I don't even need to do that because I'm just good. I'm already integrated around that thing. And then when you really do create that safety, then when you really are like, okay, I'm here, this is often when your body is like, hey, that thing that you didn't want to feel like 2 years ago, well, I think you're ready to feel it now. And sometimes this sort of comes forward, and having the duality as well to hold both, that yes, we can move through the grief or the shame or however it shows up, and also it gets to be in a space where we can also feel good too. It's not just choose one or the other. So I love how you've shared on that.
Yeah, it's like anything we're holding, there's all this unfinished business in the system,
Hmm.
subconscious level. And it's like any unprocessed emotion or, unfinished business there is going to be taking up space energetically. It's going to be taking up life force energy. It's like it's like there's residency in your body, it's not paying rent, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So when we can, and I find, honestly, you can do this yourself to a degree, but it's really powerful to have a mirror
Mm.
because we're really good at our own shit.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
really good at our own shit, We're
We
like we're really
are.
like covering up the bullshit or just being used to the way it is. And this is, something that has been true for me is that for years I just thought it was normal that I was kind of running on exhaustion all the time and felt very little capacity to do more than what I was doing and had a lot of brain fog and, you know, really I thought that that was normal.
Yeah.
And over the course of becoming a steward of my nervous system, which also involved changing my diet and, learning more about my biological needs and then being able to tend to my system in the moment of like what is happening with my body, I can't even believe how much capacity I have now. Like it really is, it's hard to explain capacity to people who haven't quite felt it because it is a feeling.
Hmm.
And when I think about what my life, like how full, so many of us, all of us, we want to remember, we want to reclaim that we are abundance and we want that experience of abundance in our life, abundance of love, of connection, of
Yeah.
impact, of success, of money, of wealth, creativity. We want that abundance. And yet we hit these upper limits or these ceilings that we sort of normalize or that are normalized. We have these
Mhm.
beliefs sometimes, often that are running of like it has to be hard or it's too much or, you
Yeah.
know, the way that those come up. And the thing is, wherever we hit those places is just an indicator, oh, this is just the edge of my capacity right now.
Hmm.
But through pleasure, I can expand that. Like there's no glass ceiling with pleasure. And so
Yeah.
something you said, something about like kind of like inverting the like pleasure as a byproduct or like a reward you get from productivity. In my world, you switch it around. It's like
Yeah.
pleasure becomes the baseline because it's what actually expands you and taps you into your creative genius and into flow state in a way that the opposite doesn't. And then you actually become more productive.
Yes. I
Yes.
I love this idea of pleasure as a strategy. And I definitely in the past, I almost signed up to this pleasure coaching, sacred sexuality course. And at the time, I wasn't ready for it. And now I like think more about, I'm like, oh man, I wish someone had really talked me into doing that because I know that would have been so powerful for me at that point. But I was very much of the mindset that that pleasure is a reward, that that would just be nice for me, but it's actually not going to move the needle. And so, well, that can be a reward for later once I've got my business further along or something like that. And I think a lot of people in my world can hold on to that perception a little bit. And so I love how you're showing of like actually flip it round, like and as you say, the subconscious, it's not this demystify sorry, it's this big mystery because when you see how you move in the world, when you see what is out of alignment and you'll feel it in the body, the feelings that feel more expansive or the feelings that feel more contracted, it's all just a different way that life is communicating with you and giving you these raw materials to point at the thing and say, hey, this is for you. This is the time for your remembering. So how wonderful that you get to share that. And I would love to touch more on these pleasure codes as well and how this differs as well from what a lot of people might think of as being like a pleasure practice.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's what I like to really give that insight that so often people hear about my work and they think it's solely like sexual work.
Mm,
And it's really not. That's a part of it, and that's a beautiful, juicy part of it. And, sexual healing and healing repressed sexual shame and, healing relating, sexual relating and sensuality and pleasure is like, that's all a part of it. But that's not all of it because pleasure is not just about sex. Pleasure is really life force energy. Like
mm,
Eros is life force energy. It's creative and it's everywhere. And so it's really actually attuning our senses to pay attention more to what feels good. And
yeah,
the nervous system is wired for survival. So there's a reason why biologically we're wired to look for what's not going right or what potentially might not go right because the nervous system is more prone to protect from potential threat than it is to just ease into the presence of, pleasure or beauty or safety. And, I don't use the word safety that much, which is, pretty typical with many somatic practitioners because I also work with exponential growth, and I work with women who are really interested in self-actualization, and the sensation of that is pressure. So we really, it's like we have to change the relationship that we have to pressure because growth is not safe. Growth means you're
yeah,
leaving who you were to become who you're becoming, but you don't know that person yet, and you're going to have to take many risks on that path, right? So the way that I teach safety is actually through a spiritual lens because when we really think about it, we're going to die. This body
mm,
is temporary. So I love and appreciate yoga so much because it keeps this truth at the forefront. You can't go through a yoga asana practice without coming into Shavasana. You can't read the Bhagavad Gita without
mm,
learning about the nature of the soul, and that the soul is never born, it never dies, but this body is like a temporary suit of clothes. So we have to come to terms with that and stop trying to seek the illusion of safety in this life if we actually want to self-actualize.
yeah,
So for me, I use the word pleasure because pleasure is a felt sense, the way I define it, of a softening or an expansion or a lightness in the body. It's like that feeling of life alive. It's like the feeling of your soul, right? So
yeah,
the pleasure codes are really a process of like a, it's like soul awakening, really. It's a process of method for thriving life. And it's a three-part framework, but it really has infinite depth because it works above the neck and below. So we're working with both conscious and subconscious through the
mhm,
codes. And so the first code is doing more of what feels good. And this is really like a baseline prescription for a thriving life because your mind and your body will keep trying to pull you towards, you know, what could go wrong, or focusing more on scarcity and abundance, or focusing more
yeah,
on, what isn't working versus what is, or turning on the news, or, all of that. And so we have to train ourselves to actually be stewards of beauty and magic what feels good, even if it's the opposite of what like most people are doing. And that's the thing that's difficult about this work is that it's fun and it's beautiful, but it's the opposite of the status quo. So you
yeah,
have to be a little bit crazy. You have to be like a revolutionary to be able to decide I am going to orient to pleasure and beauty. When everyone's telling you, you should be paying more attention to like, what's this terrible thing that's happening, this terrible thing
Yeah.
that's happening. Like, but I actually want to be the counter vortex to that.
Mhm.
I want to be the counter vortex to the madness of the world because I recognize what you focus on grows. And if I just keep feeding the perpetual cycle, then what am I really doing to change anything?
Yeah.
So I have to be the embodiment of what I want to see in the world, which means I have to practice an orienting to the goodness of it. So doing more of what feels good is like all day long. You're checking in with your body and your senses that are the gateways to your soul and to your nervous system. And so you're just you're attuned to your environment and you're doing more of what actually feels good in your body. And you're taking the time to actually feel that. And it's not just a thought. And this is what I really want to drive this point home, right? Because we overthink and underfeel. It's not like
Yeah.
look around the room, notice what you like to look at. I'm like, oh, okay, I like to look at those flowers. And I'm just thinking, I like flowers in my head. That's not it. It's
Yeah.
like you look at the flowers and you drink them in
Mhm.
like medicine, and you stay long enough until your body actually feels the flowers and your belly unclenches and your chest softens and your jaw releases and your vision gets a little bit more sparkly, and then you're like tapped in,
Yeah.
right? So this is like the baseline, and pleasure like this, it compounds like compounding interest. So a lot of times when I start working with women, especially highly ambitious, driven women who are just like all about going faster and doing more and getting more on the to-do list done, they're just like,
Yeah, I know her. Yeah.
yeah, you're fucking kidding me. You want me to just like look around and like
Yeah.
waste time? It's like
Yes.
this is what actually expands time. And it's funny when people want to work with me and then they're like, oh, I don't really think I have the time. And I'm like, that's actually why you work with me.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the time or energy. That's actually why you work with me. Because this
Yes.
is how you completely change your relationship to time and emotions and energy, and you become so much more spacious than you can't comprehend it right now. You can't possibly comprehend who you become on the other side of this work because you've actually never felt it before, or you've touched it but haven't sustained it.
Mm.
Right? So doing more of what feels good, it just starts to compound like compounding interest, and you become more alive and you become more vibrant. And when pain comes, inevitably, because it's going to, that's the nature of life, you
Yes.
have more space to actually process and deal with it in a way that feels like you're in integrity and that your whole life doesn't have to fall apart because of it.
Mm.
I feel like that for years of my life, a heavy emotion would come. Like, if I was angry or frustrated or disappointed with my relationship or with what was going on with my work, or if I felt shame, it's like these things would come and they would completely shut everything down. The level of stress of unprocessed, unresolved emotion in the body would actually just create more and more of a freeze state and wreak havoc on all of my relationships, on my work, on the energy that I brought to my life. And so sometimes you don't know it while you're in it because it just seems normal,
Mm.
to be carrying that much stress around. And then you start to dissolve some of those layers of stress. And it's like, holy crap, I can't believe how much energy I have, how much better I feel, how much better my marriage is, how much better my relationships are. So doing more of what feels good is number one. And I teach a whole spectrum of pleasure from just those microdosing, which is it's like you can do that all day long, to macrodosing and working with orgasmic pleasure, really working with pussy reclamation. I love Mama Gina's book, Pussy Reclamation,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
healing shame and moving through those layers because it's like wherever, our sexuality is like the seat of creativity and confidence and juiciness and magic and power. And so when we really open up that channel, it's magnetic and incredible. And it's like the ultimate nervous system expander because you can't be making stress hormones and pleasure hormones at the same time. So the more we bring in those pleasure hormones through orgasmic power,
Yeah.
the more we dissolve stress. And, people don't like chronic illness chronic stress, chronic illness is like rooted in the nervous system. It's like rooted in nervous system regulation. And so people laugh at me sometimes, or I'm just, recently I was talking to some menopausal women and they were like, airing all their frustrations. And I'm like, have you prioritized orgasm? And they're like, oh my God, it's the last thing on my list. I have no libido and this and that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's exactly the reason to prioritize. The
Mm-hmm.
hormones that are released through that orgasm are the counter to the hormones that are impacting your mood and the way that you feel relationally and in the world. So it's like turn on is not like pleasure is not a byproduct of turn on. Turn on is a byproduct of pleasure. It's like you decide to actually prioritize pleasure and it stokes turn on. And turn on is like what actually creates magnetism in your life for more of what you want. Right. So that's number one, doing more of what, and then there's two more. And the second one works with desire. And as women, it's like we have there's so much shame and guilt around desire. Even just looking at the way that religion has had influence over, the course of thousands of years and the development of women. And that feeling of like not wanting more or being too much and so much guilt and shame and fear around desire. But I really consider desire the holy roadmap. Desire is like a divine GPS to your calling, who you're here to
Yeah.
be. And
Yeah.
when you want more, when you decide that you want more, that means you have to become more.
Yeah.
That's the invitation, and so
Yeah.
when you
Be the
think
woman who can hold them more. Yeah. Yeah.
who can create more value in the world,
Yeah.
has more courage. And when you think about the structure of why women were taught to not desire more, it makes sense because if you don't desire more, then you don't become more powerful.
Yeah.
And then you're a lot easier to control. But if you decide that you want more and you're going to be the woman, you're going to become the woman who can create and hold and give more and be more, that's fucking power. That can't be subdued.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
So to me, it's like we're living in a time of feminine reclamation, not just for the fact of feminine reclamation, not just for that in and of itself, but for divine union, because we can see that the way this sort of imbalance of energetics on this planet is wreaking havoc on many things, like just incessant war machine and so much inequity in this world. And to me, feminine reclamation is really the calling of our time to bring more of that dance into divine union so that we can restore more harmony on this planet. It's a big fucking calling. It's not like a little deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But the domain of the feminine is pleasure and beauty and desire and magic.
Yeah.
So reclaiming the power of your desire is not something that elevates you, but it's something that actually elevates all of humanity. And so I do this in two ways. It's like, first of all, reclaiming the power of your desire for your life, your vision, your 10x vision, exponential growth kind of vision, delusional vision, right?
Hmm.
You into more innovation and more of your innate potential and power and purpose. But then also we work with the desire of your body in any given moment. And this is about emotional alchemy. Right. So if I have the desire to build a multi-million-dollar global company that's changing the lives of people all over the world, and I sit with that desire, and then what happens inside my body is this clenching up, and I start to go like this. And if you can't see, I'm just like my shoulders are slouching down, and then all of a sudden, what's happening? There's like the emergence of shame.
Yeah.
This particular shape, right? Every emotion has like a shape or a posture or sort of like a character that will emerge when you really sit with the desire of your body, right? And so in any given moment, maybe I have an interaction with somebody that feels a certain way or something's not going the way I want it to be going, then I can just be like, okay, what is the desire of my body in this moment? And really go into that and exaggerate it and really like feel what wants to emerge there and let it, because emotions are meant to move, energy and motion. And so often we just override, repress, keep pushing through, but
Mhm.
that will just keep perpetuating, right? More of the same issues.
Yeah.
So you in and you ride the wave and you let sound express and movement and breath. And then ultimately, you come out on the other side of that wave and you've got more space because you're not carrying the emotion anymore. You've alchemized the emotion through your body. Now it's not holding. Now it's not part of your magnetic field, right? So it's like
Yeah.
an in the moment clearing process.
Mm.
Um,
I
yeah.
sometimes describe this as like you have one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake, and it's like you're trying to move, but it's the most sticky, jolted, and it's so energy consuming and you don't get anywhere. So it's almost like that alchemy. It's like, okay, we've got the foot off the brake now. You want to go? Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so essential. And it
Yeah.
really like it's also playful. When you can, I know growing up in the States and just sort of going through like the public school system, it's just like we're so socialized to just be convenient. Just
Mhm.
sit still, be quiet, don't make too much noise, don't take up too much space, don't do anything that would
Mm.
make anybody else uncomfortable. And so when integrating a healthy relating to your own body and emotions back into your life, because as babies, we know how to do it. We come in and it's just like you feel an emotion, you see a baby, they're just like, they're going to feel the whole thing. They're going to express it through sound, movement. And then they get to the other side of it and they're like happy as a clam. It's
Yeah.
gone. They're not holding it in their body. They're
Yeah.
like screamed and raged and punched and kicked and then they like feel better.
Yeah.
So as adults, it's like it's actually like inviting more playfulness and more kind of like primal energy to come back into how we hold ourselves and how we move and how we express ourselves. And it's powerful and it creates a permission field for other people to do the same. When you're in
Yeah.
communication with people and you're able to say, you know what? I just need to pause a second because I'm feeling so much pressure in my system. And I think I just need to take a few minutes to actually move this so that I can show up to this conversation in the way that I really want to.
Yeah.
That's like, for so many of us, that's like insane to actually honor the needs of our body in a moment and then
Yeah.
give other people permission to do the same. Can you imagine
Mm.
like work and business and relating like happened this way?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember I was on a date last year and the guy I was on a date with, he was like, yeah, so I'm looking to have a serious relationship. And he was like really upfront with what he wanted. And it just suddenly I got this huge like rush of heat all at my body. And I was like, I'm gonna need a minute because I'm having a full body reaction to what you just shared, and I don't want to respond from this space. And
Yeah.
it was so interesting to have that experience, and that was probably one of the first times I actually honored that in the moment as well, because sometimes you can feel the pressure of, well, there's two people here, we're having this conversation, and normally I would just keep talking, but to be able to create that space was so healing. And I love what you were sharing earlier as well about menopausal women, because I think so often the mind will do anything to distract us from the depths of our soul. So the mind will tell you, like, no, you don't need a self-pleasure practice. Like, that's the last thing on your list. Or like, no, don't do your breath work practice or whatever it is, because the mind is going to try and talk you out of that because it's what's going to support you. And then you do it and you're like, oh my God, why was I using all this energy to talk me out of not doing that thing versus I did it and now I feel so different on the other side of it. But yeah, it's
Right.
like I mean, it's advanced moving into relationship or however it comes up to be able to, first of all, understand and notice your body's signal and to create the space and do something with it, even if it's not the ideal moment. To be able to
Yeah.
honor that is so powerful.
It's really powerful. And one of the greatest pieces of advice that I feel like I offer is like never trust your mind when your body is
Mm.
dysregulated.
Mm.
Your story, the rationale around what your story follows your state. So if your nervous system
Yeah.
is dysregulated and your body's in a state of stress, your mind is going to play a whole slideshow of all of the reasons why you might be stressed.
Yes.
And it's going to create a lot more problems because you're going to want to blame, right? The ego is like you're in that survival state and it's going to create more separation. And it's like it must be their fault. It must be their fault. It must be their fault and this and that. And so first it's like, okay, I'm not going to fall for the slideshow. I'm actually get to the level of the body, and this kind of brings us into pleasure code number 3, which is really a a deeply spiritual and, like you said, kind of spiritually advanced code. And there's also two parts of this. So the
Mm.
third code is normalizing extraordinary, right? So after we're orienting to pleasure on a regular basis, it's not something you just,
Yes.
it's something that it's a way you live. And we're reclaiming the power of desire. So we're aligning ourselves to our vision and we're aligning ourselves to that sort of future memory so that we can live, in alignment with that each and every day. So we can develop devotion, but we're also aware of the desires of our body and we're actually allowing, we're giving access to the way the body wants to move so that we can continue to create more of a clear channel in the nervous system. And then we get to normalizing extraordinary. And one part of this is like, perhaps if we're dealing with conflict or, we're dealing with a challenge, is like, dear God, how would you have me move? Like, I'm willing to see this differently. It's like a prayer. It's like, how would my highest self who's not in separation, A Course in Miracles says there's only one mistake, and from that mistake is born all suffering. And that's the belief in the illusion that we're separate from God and from each other. And
Yes.
so all of my problems come from that illusion.
Hmm.
I'm having a problem in my life. There's a really good chance that I'm co-creating it because there's something about me that's in that place. So I'm willing to see this differently. What would you have me do? What would you have me say? I'm normalizing extraordinary. I want to be an extraordinary human being. I want to be an extraordinary presence in my relationships, in this world. So that's the sort of internal piece, the sort of like, you know, and then the other piece of normalizing extraordinary is getting yourself into relationships with people who are doing extraordinary things because
Yeah.
I'm in this, amazing liberating process of building an impact-driven company and I've never I've never created the kind of success before that I want to create. And I have a lot of my nervous system holds a lot of information and memory that is in opposition to what I want to create. Like I want to create lots and lots of abundance and impact and success. And yet I have a system that grew up oriented more to scarcity, right? So I have to normalize extraordinary by being in spaces and relationships with people so that my system can calibrate to that level, that frequency, because of the association, right? People who are going to continue to help lift me up. And this is the power of investing into coaching and mentorship and mastermind spaces and retreats and in-person events where, you're being uplifted and elevated as the person that you're becoming, right? And so
Uh,
this,
yeah.
like normalizing extraordinary for me is like, it helped me call in the partner that I wanted because previously I thought like all men suck, all my trauma. I was like, oh, all my friends are single mothers. I should probably start to seek out couples who I admire so
Yeah.
that my system can be like, oh, this is possible. And so those beliefs can start to be reworked through relationship. Same thing with money and with business. It's like, I can't really make money in transformational leadership. That was my previous belief, and then it's like,
Yes.
oh my God, she's making millions, she's making millions, she's making millions. Like, oh, I need to be in proximity. I need to be investing to be in proximity to people who are doing and creating and living more of what I want,
Totally.
Yeah.
I love
So,
this of surrounding yourself with the example that you want to buy into, you want to feel into, you want to experience. And when you do that, it creates a sense of your mind is looking to prove that you're right. It's looking for evidence to prove that you're right. And when you're looking for, oh, men are dreadful and all this thing, and then you look for it and you're like, see, I told you, see, I told you. And when you
yeah,
can,
there's actually like a
yeah,
part of the brain, right? It's like the reticular activating
yes,
system.
that's it.
Look for what you think, on a subconscious level of what is held as true. And it's like proof of concept, proof of concept. So you have to change your proof of concept.
Mm, yeah. No, I love this so much of what you just shared. It's so powerful. And I love the piece on this illusion of separation and how we can sort of boil everything down to like, this is where that comes from. Can you share with us like a tangible example of how that's shown up for you more recently?
Of separation, of like where the separation stuff comes in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Either
mean,
you or something you've seen your clients. Yeah.
yeah, it shows up the most for me in my marriage, which I think is so
Mm.
typical, right?
Yes.
It's like there will be something that I feel frustrated with about my partner. And
Mm.
I've learned enough now, the way that I move in my marriage now is that I often don't express myself right away when I'm feeling a frustration because I realize that there's usually something deeper that's unseen there about me.
Yeah.
I want to blame my partner for my dissatisfaction. But I know that when I have a finger pointing at somebody else, I have three more pointing at myself, right? So it requires radical responsibility and it really relinquishing victim consciousness. Like
Mm.
my dissatisfaction is about myself and I want to blame it on someone else and I want someone to save me. But when I'm in a victim triangle, I'm always losing.
Yeah.
If there's a villain and a savior, it's like I'm helpless. I have no control. And so what I want is sovereignty. And I want to take full responsibility for my life because I know that's really the only way to live in alignment with how I want to feel and how I want to lead myself and how I want to hold the blessings in my life. So if something is frustrating me, I'll first do the pleasure codes, right? So
Mhm.
I'll be like, okay, in this moment, I'll acknowledge like, oh, I feel clenching in my chest and in my belly and my hands, my fists are squeezing. So I'll just kind of pause from noticing what's happening and I'll do some orienting and I'll orient to pleasure. I'll bring in more what feels good literally in the moment because you can use this like a triage, like in the moment when you're having like super activation, also like you can use this as a lifestyle framework, but also as triage. So I'll orient, I'll bring in more of what feels good. It creates a little bit of space inside so that I'm not in that super activated state. And then I'll move the emotion. And so I might go take some space or whatever, like go be by myself, move the emotion, even just do it in the room if anybody's there, push my hands into a wall, just like see what wants to
Yeah.
move. Make some noise, let it out. And then I'll sit with my prayer, right? Because also the desire, it's like, well, what is my desire? My desire is to have an extraordinary marriage. Who do
Mm.
I have to be in order to have an extraordinary marriage? How do I have to see this differently in order to have an extraordinary marriage? It's not
Mm.
just that, like, it's my partner's responsibility and not mine. It's both of ours. But I can't control him, but I can control myself. And so it's taking way more responsibility. And then I sit with that prayer of just like, I'm willing to see this differently. Help me to see what I'm not seeing. Help me to see this through the eyes of love. And sometimes very, very quickly, it's like, oh, it's funny. I'm doing the same exact thing that I'm mad at him for doing. Sometimes
Yes.
like that. I'm like, huh, okay. Like, I got to take responsibility for that. And I got to change the way that that's happening. Or like, how can I do this differently? Okay. Oh, I see that I got really into like kind of a controlling mode there. And it's time for me to bring in a little bit more of my feminine energy, or maybe I didn't communicate a need, So often, like when we have resentments are really just a sign of your own broken boundaries. Like if I'm resenting you, it's probably
Yeah.
because I haven't clearly expressed myself, what I want,
Mm.
what I need. Oftentimes that's the case, or I haven't made the kind of boundary that I need to make, which is really for me, a boundary isn't like, you can't do this anymore. A boundary is like, I'm not, this doesn't work for me anymore. And so like if this is happening with you, this is what I'm gonna do to make sure I
Mm.
can take care of myself, right? So yeah, I have to really look at those things and then go from there and trust, the thing about faith is that faith is so often used as a mental process, We feel the stress, we feel the worry, we feel the doubt, the confusion, and then we say a little prayer and we're still completely in a clenched up body. And we're still
Mm.
completely trying to search for answers. It's like, I trust, please guide me, thank you, whatever. And then we're like white knuckling it still.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
teach
It's like
faith.
meeting it with an agenda.
Yeah. It's like, wait, but how are you having faith? Like, what is that
Mm.
prayer if you're still trying to be in the driver's seat?
Yeah.
Faith is a somatic process where it's like, okay, I recognize that I don't have the answer here. And so I'm like, please, dear God, guide me. And then it's my job to get out of the fucking way and actually have I will be guided. And so what does that mean? It means I have to orient to the things that help me to fucking relax,
Yeah.
that help my body to soften, that help me take the hands off the wheel, essentially, so that I can receive the guidance that I prayed for. Right.
Yes.
It's like, this is the missing piece. We're not here to just say the prayer. We're here to be the prayer. We're here to be the embodiment of the prayer. Trust
Yeah.
means that I'm receptive.
Yeah.
So,
I love this so much. And it's reminded me, I saw this reel the other day, and she's like, universe, tell me what to do. And then she's like, no, not that universe, something else. No, not that, something else. And yes, it is confronting, it is triggering. And that's the point of transformational work, is that you have to go inward. Like there's no amount of work that you can do on yourself that is going to change somebody else. And
right.
when you notice this reaction to it, it's like, oh, that's for you. If it wasn't, it wouldn't touch you or create this reaction in this way. So yeah,
That's
I
right. Like
don't.
we want like a taster menu from God. We're like, please, dear God, guide me. And then we're like white knuckling and we might get a little indicator and you're like, can you give me another option? It's just like, bitch, this is this is the work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, can you give me the option where actually I'm fine and everyone else needs to change? No.
It's really about them though, right? Like it's I'm really good. It's not.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh, this conversation is so yummy. I'm loving this so much.
Oh, dude.
I want to move into a little bit around leadership, and you talk about expanding your capacity for more. And I know you've sort of been on kind of both ends of the spectrum in terms of like financial abundance. So I want to know, like, if we can touch on what's changing your sort of leadership and your income since building your business to turn on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I my son was born in April a couple years ago. I have a 13-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I had a lot of when my son was born, we found ourselves in a really difficult financial place. And I was applying for food stamps, not for the first time,
Mhm.
but it would be the last because I remember it was like another one of those line in the sand moments, like something is actually wrong with the way that I relate to money. I had perpetuated that victim narrative around like it's the system and it's this and it's that. And I didn't learn any financial literacy growing up and just like all the blame, right? I lived with that for a long time, the single mom story and, some of that, there were challenges, of course, but it's like who we are is who we are when we rise to meet the challenges that life brings us, right? And so
Yeah.
I sat there filling out this application, just feeling like I have so much power and so many gifts to share. Like I've been changing people's lives in ways that I'm so insanely proud of for over a decade with my work. Why am I 30? I was 35 at the time. Why am I 35 years old filling out a fucking food stamps application? Something's not right here, you know? And it's not outside of me. It's me.
Yeah.
And so that really sent me on a journey because what I realized is that somatic work had been transforming everything in my life. It had been changing my marriage, it had been changing my relationships, it had been doing so much to, shift who I was and how I related to things. But I realized that I had not applied somatic work to money. And so I started to get curious around how I was contracting on a body level around money, work, and business, where that lack of trust and faith, where the embodiment of scarcity was still living within me, the feeling of closing up inside, not just the thoughts of like, I'm abundant, I'm a money magnet, I'm a magnet for money and miracles, an affirmation queen. I'd been saying affirmations for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I
That's
realized that
not
it
the work, by the way. Spoiler
was
alert if you're listening and you're like, wait, I've been doing that for years too. Is that why that doesn't work?
Like I had to get below the neck. I had to get in the
Yeah.
body. I started that journey of my own, and I really think it was that work and bringing pleasure in, like anytime, in relationship with money, whether I'm like looking at my bank account or whether and I'm not doing this perfectly all the time, by the way. I don't claim to be doing this perfectly all the time. But if money is going out or money is coming in, it's like, how can I soften myself around that? How can I find the pleasure in that? How can I be in gratitude, but not just in my mind, but actually let my body get like, to feel the joy of this flow, and change the relationship literally with money as a person that I'm relating to in my life. I realized I had a really crappy relationship. I wasn't really a good partner to money for a long time. I didn't trust it. I criticized it. I wanted more of it. I was afraid to want more of it. Like all those things. I had it and take care of it well.
Yeah.
And so I started to change all of that. And as a result of that, I think the right influences started to come into my life. And that's where I started to, invest in courses and coaches and coaching and, found our mentor, Shoshana Raven,
Yeah.
and really started to feel expanded in my capacity to take risk because that's not something that I valued before. I hadn't built the capacity for that or really even understood the value. My first coaching container that I invested in many, many, many years ago was like a $10,000 coaching container. I paid half of it on a credit card. I was like on a hope and a dream and a prayer. And I realized later, I realize now that what I really wanted was that coach to like save me from doing the brave work I had to do to grow myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, needless to say, I broke that coaching contract halfway, over a decade ago because I was like a 25-year-old single mom and didn't have the capacity to do the brave work required to actually grow as a leader.
Mm.
Nobody can do that for you. And so investing is not about I'm paying you to do that for me. Investing is like, this is my skin in the game to hold myself accountable to grow.
Yes.
Feel feel the pressure of like, I have to show up more than I've ever shown up in my life. You expand your nervous system capacity to do the thing by doing the thing. You have to
Hmm.
support fear, you know? So it's an amazing story, actually. I was like in a low ticket investment and really feeling expanded and like, okay, I want to get into this mastermind space. I'm ready. It's $23,000. I'm on food stamps. I'm in credit card debt. I have like no fucking money. I'm at home with my baby.
Yeah.
No, I believe more in abundance than scarcity. I believe more in possibility than limitation. Like for the first time in my life, I really feel myself situated in this way of being, of like actually normalizing extraordinary on a daily fucking basis. And over the course of many months of, not only raising my prices and selling more and having more clients come into my ecosystem and creating more incredible programs, I was also applying for loans and I was applying for grants and I was having really, really scary conversations with potential investors, getting tons of no's everywhere I went, doors slamming in my face.
Yeah.
And then eventually, with the persistence that I had and the real holding of the vision, a door opened for me, and I was able to manifest that money and invest and get myself into that mastermind space. And so now, over the course of the last 9 months, the ways in which I've grown, my business has grown, the intersection of the pleasure work that I do with myself and having that calibration of like normalizing extraordinary has been tremendous, and if it weren't for the pleasure work, I wouldn't have had the capacity to take the risk. I wouldn't have had the
Totally.
capacity to hold vision. For me, that's the foundation of all of it. And then when that intersects with mentorship, when that intersects with coaching, when that intersects, even just the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the influence that you take in, and you can actually take it into your body. Like I wouldn't invest in a mastermind without somatic work. And
Yeah.
I see this all the time. People are like, I'm here, I made the investment. It's not working. It's like,
Yeah.
it's because there's this piece that you need, the embodiment of the thing. And if that's not a part of it and you don't also have that going on, then where is it all going to land? It's just coming
Mm.
here, out here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been invaluable, and even, I would say even just giving myself permission to have a bigger vision would also not have been possible without the foundation of pleasure work,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. I love what you're sharing as well about, you go and you just go and collect your nose and then you got your 23K investment. And I gave one of my clients homework this week. I was like, go and get me 10 no's. Just go out and get me 10 no's, go and pitch to clients, go and pitch to be on podcasts, go and ask people to collaborate with you on IG Lives, go and get me 10 no's. And I just know this is going to be her like biggest, boldest week yet. And I'm so excited because it's always the way we expand our capacity for the no, we expand our capacity for everything that comes on the other side of that as well. So,
That's right. Yeah, you have to be willing to feel the sensation of rejection
yeah.
again and again and again. And if you want to feel the sensation of the yes,
Hmm.
you know, and I know, that that's most of us avoid that. And
Hmm.
same with me. Again, it's just like it doesn't matter what level you're at. It-
Yeah.
I've worked with women at all different levels of life and leadership and business and money, and it's like we
Hmm.
continue to hit upper limits no matter where we go. And those upper limits are actually nervous system oriented. And
Yes.
so the work, the pleasure work is still the same. It's like, can I let myself feel good here where it doesn't feel good?
Mm.
How can I bring pleasure into the pressure of this, and how can I change my relationship to the sensation so that I can trust myself at a new level, so that I can normalize this, so that I can make my current ceiling my new floor, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I just know there are going to be so many people listening who are like, yes, I want to do that work. I want to lean into my pleasure. How do I find you? How do I work with you? So, Samantha, can you share where people can find you, what proximity is like in your world, what you've got coming up?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on Instagram at the.samanthajo, J-O. And you can send me a DM there and let me know that you listen to this podcast. I would love to chat with you. I don't know when is this episode going to be aired?
This episode is going to come out on the 20th of July.
Okay, so that will be one day after my upcoming live event in New York City called With Pleasure Live, which is on the 19th. I have a podcast called With Pleasure that you can check out and binge if you so desire.
Yeah,
And I do one-to-one work, a Thrive coaching container, which is so incredible. I have a space called the Temple Miracle Mind, just like a different take on a mastermind because we're really working with the frequency of miracles and we're really working through embodiment, but how you apply that to your leadership, your relationships, your business. Um,
beautiful.
a retreat next May in Ireland called The Wise Woman that I'll be co-facilitating with my longtime co-creator partner, Lauren Lamley, who's also an incredibly gifted leader, and probably some other in-person events coming up over the next few months. But for now, those are the best places to work with me.
Beautiful. Oh, I just want to thank you so much. This conversation was just so frequency enhancing, just so much coding, what you just shared that I just feel so lit up and I could just talk to you all day. So thank you for your depth, your truth, your wisdom, all of it. It's just been such a pleasure to have you here. And I love what a permission slip you really are for everyone.
Thank you so much, Katie. This has been a real joy, and I feel the same way. I feel like we could just hang out for the rest of the day. And yeah, a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for giving me the invitation to share with your audience, and thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And so, for those of you listening, if this episode expanded you, moved you, or turned something on in your body, please share it. Tag us, leave a review on Spotify or Apple. It really helps this podcast land in the hands of more women who are ready to lead through this full frequency. And if you're sitting in that potent space between who you've been and who you're becoming, if you want a room where your next evolution isn't just seen, it's expected, then Aligned Ascension is that room. It's my high frequency mastermind for soul led leaders scaling without pressure, performance, or burnout. This isn't where you learn another strategy. This is where you stabilize your self sourced power. You can DM me the word ascend on Instagram or check out the show notes for more. Until next time, honey, stay in your body, in your truth, and in your power.